Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on health, diet, bodybuilding, and philosophy. I interview experts, doctors, coaches, and N=1 case studies to answer your questions about improving health, achieving your best physique, and making sustainable progress. We'll cover topics from carnivore and ketogenic diets to bodybuilding to life philosophy and everything in between. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by LMNT Electrolytes. This month, we're switching it up with an exclusive offer that's only for VIP LMNT partners, including Carnivore Cast listeners. You can now receive this free sample pack along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is provided in the show notes or my Instagram link in bio. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, all one word. And as I said, I'll include the link in the show notes. LMNT Electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious, and get yours today to help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show.
Chase Irons is a successful trainer and content creator making honest content about enhanced bodybuilding and ways to do it safely. His YouTube channel is packed with excellent informational videos, vlogs, and he's done hundreds of live Q&As. Chase also runs a popular Discord channel where he helps members with blood work, cycle questions, and more. Finally, Chase is a father and husband living in Chicago. Welcome to the show, Chase.
What's up, man? Glad to be here.
Yeah. So I love all your content. I've been following you forever, but wanted to, for folks listening who may be less familiar with you, start with your background and how you got into bodybuilding in the first place.
Oh man, I mean, my dad was a bodybuilder. He was a bodybuilder in the 80s, and I just remember, like, as a kid, seeing. He only got one deal of professional photos ever done, but he always had them in the house. And I remember seeing those and him, like, he was just like posing with his arm up. And that from a young age just always like stuck with me. Like, dad has muscles and like, this is cool and whatever. And then it was like, by the time I got into high school, by the time I was a freshman, my dad made me go with my brother, who was a senior, to the gym, and he wrote us a workout to do. And it was basically chest and tries on Monday, back and back Tuesday, legs and shoulders Wednesday, and then repeat it nice. Through the week. And so I'd just go with my brother and, started working out relatively seriously at that point. Except, I mean, when I was a freshman, I was kind of dicking off a lot and just like, I didn't completely understand it, but,
Sure.
But once my brother graduated and like moved on, then I was on my own when I was a sophomore. And then my dad, when I was after my sophomore year, my dad made a deal with me. He was like, if you take care of any of the chores in the house, that we ask, that we want you to do, which, like, we lived on it was like 5 acres, and we had like this big pasture with a bunch of weeds. So like, my main job was to go out into the pasture on the 4-wheeler, and we use the weed eater and cut all the weeds out. And it was just constantly a weekly process. But he was like, as long as you do that, I'll buy you as much protein powder as you can drink. And I was like, nice. Okay, so so I way overdid it, and I was drinking 5 shakes a day. Each shake was 3 scoops each of the Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard Whey. And so I was drinking those, and I was eating the meals that my parents would make. So tons of calories were coming in, and I was training. At that point, I was serious about training. And I grew from like 150 pounds to like 185 pounds in that summer, that 3-month span. Wow. And it wasn't fat either. Like, it was a solid natural high schooler. But I was buying protein powder like crazy. And that's when it really clicked with me at that point, like seeing results like that. And yeah, from there, it stuck with me on into college. And through college, like I studied health and exercise science, and my plan was to go on to physical therapy, but then I realized you have to have really good grades to do that. And I didn't want to retake any classes. So ended it there and was like, I didn't know what I was going to do at that point, and kind of fell into personal training out of nowhere. And yeah, man, I did one-on-one personal training for 10 years. And then from there, switched to online coaching. And I've actually stopped online coaching as of like a year and a half ago. And yeah, now it's just training myself and making YouTube videos and hanging out with all the dudes in the Discord and all that now. So
Love it.
yeah, that's
and
it.
when did you first compete, and what shows did you do?
Yeah, no, I've competed one time, and that was
okay.
That was in 2021
With Jansen, right?
with Jordan Peters.
Oh, Jordan Peters. That's right. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, I got hooked up with Jordan like right before the pandemic started. So I was like, did that whole thing the year before, like cut down, bulked up, cut down for the show. But yeah, then we did the show at the end of 2021. So yeah, it's been almost 3 years now since I've done a show, and that was it was a small show in Michigan. But yeah, I mean, I didn't win the show. I got beat by somebody who I actually saw at the Arnold this last year, who did turn pro, which made me feel good about myself. I was like, okay, nice. At least you went on. At least you went on to go pro. But yeah, we actually talked for a little bit after that, and he was like, you know, asking if I was still like trying to go down that route. And, you know, I immediately, I didn't really think it was in the cards for me, but within the last year and a half, I feel like I have a shot, you know, as long as I kind of keep on the trajectory that I'm going. So, you know, we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, that's the only show that I've done so far. And it was an experience for sure. So
yeah, that's interesting. The guy who beat me in the overall and classic in the show I did in April, Anthony Mantello, he got his pro card.
Oh yeah,
at nationals. So that was a little bit validating.
Yeah, that's a popular dude. Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, he was nice to me backstage. He was actually very down to earth.
Yeah.
When did you start using PEDS, and why? What got you into that?
That was when I was 23. It was like, it was like right after college, and right as I was moving to Chicago. Actually, I grew up in Oklahoma and went to OU and did everything there. And then once I realized I had no clue what to do in Oklahoma, I ended up moving up here to train a guy. But in that process, that's when I was like, pulled the trigger on testosterone. And it was because throughout college, you know, I had been cutting and bulking that entire time, and realizing that, what was it? It was like, I saw the chart where it's talking about like how much muscle, what is it? It's like the fat-free mass index, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was like, shit, I'm like right in line with this for what a natural person can do. And so I was just like, well, this is it. It's like, am I okay being 160 pounds and lean? Like, it was a good look. You know, I had, you know, fun in college with that, but it's like, but if you're like serious about this stuff, it's not enough. So I was just like, at that point, I realized like, well, this is it. And so went on 500 tests and shot it all in one shot right off the bat. And it was a nightmare of side effects and bloat and the thing that was the worst was my appetite went through the roof, and I could not stop eating anything. So I got real fat, real bloated. I went from like 160 pounds to 200 pounds, but it was fat. It was just fat and bloat and just miserableness. And then,
Is this
yeah.
when you moved in with the guy that you were personal training and where you're like raiding his pantry?
Yes. So that was it. I started it in the process of moving to train him. And so all this was like going on towards the start of when I was training. So he was losing weight and I was gaining weight rapidly. And he did really well though. Like he lost, what was it? He went from like what was it? I think it was like 240 down to 180 pounds. Like he did great in the 6-month span that I was with him.
Because you ate all his food.
But yeah, I mean, I ate everything in his pantry, so he couldn't. But yeah, so I ate all of his food. But yeah, gained a ridiculous amount of weight in like it was like in half the time that I was with, because I was with that guy for 6 months. The first 3 months, I basically got fat. And then I stopped the cycle and stopped the test and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. And was just like, I mean, I need to cut. So then I was like, what's the cutting cycle? I was like, oh, the RIP blend. So test, trend, and master on. So I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. Started that and started eating what he was eating. And because once I stopped the test, my appetite went back to normal and I could actually diet and I wasn't raiding his pantry and like blew past him and got leaner than him and rounder and more shapely. And it was just like, and at that point he was like, are you on steroids? And I was just like, well, what duh.
Yep. What do you
But
think?
yeah, that's kind of how all that went down.
That's funny. And who there, I mean, the world was different back then. Who did you take advice from, or like, where did you learn about cycles and different steroids, things like that?
I mean, it was just on the forums,
yeah.
I mean, I really latched on to like getbig.com and reading all of GH15's posts. And it's funny because like I would read his posts and I knew about like the high doses of like growth hormone and stuff like that and steroids and that it's like what he would call it, chemical warfare is what he called it. This is what he called bodybuilding at the high level. So like, it's like I knew that kind of stuff was a little bit part of it, but I didn't have the guts to try big doses back then. So I would stick with, I stuck with what worked for me at that time, which was test, trend, and master on. And so I would play around with that and I would like drop the master on, but like play around with that stuff for a bit. But I mean, a lot of the information initially came from Get Big, Professional Muscle, the online forums, doing that whole thing, and then experimenting on myself with stuff and just kind of, finding my way like that. And man, it wasn't, I mean, really, there wasn't any like set up guidelines or any of this kind of stuff, like any real like class that I felt like, until John Jewett made his whole university thing.
Yeah.
But before that, I feel like it was mostly just, I guess going to like Trained by JP's forum and seeing all that stuff, and then Mountain Dogs forum, John Meadows forum. So between those things, that was pretty much where it was all at. And then
And when did you start making your own content, like on YouTube and stuff? And how's that changed for you over time?
Yeah, I mean, I started my YouTube channel 8 years ago. I think it was 8 years ago or so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 8. Yeah, I started making content because I was training tons of people. I was doing like 200 sessions 200 sessions a month. And
Wow.
it was insane. But I would just be, I mean, if you've done one-on-one training, it's a conversation constantly. Them asking questions, trying to slow down, elongate the rest periods and stuff. But they'd be just like asking these questions, and things would just be recurring over and over again. And I was like, you know what? I think I can just make a video on this. And I don't know. I feel like I've always been relatively creative in like artsy kind of what in a kind of way. So like I had this outlet where I was like, let's try to make some interesting videos. And man, my first week of videos it's embarrassing to go back and look at. But I mean, there's a lot more going on with like camera angles and what I do now. Like now it's definitely a lot more straightforward. But yeah, I would make a video just answering questions that my clients did. But like at that time, I was into watching YouTube videos of like the big fitness influencers of that time, which were, well, for me, it was watching like Christian Guzman and that style, seeing like the vlog and the daily day in the life kind of thing. And my dumbass thought that was a good idea. I was like, yeah, people will care about my day. So I was like filming a day in my life of a nobody, and they got no views. But I would answer questions. I would have a random topic question that I would answer, and then if one of my clients asked a question that was similar, I'd point them to the video, and that slowly evolved into where I eventually started talking about steroids. And I just kind of just started talking about it one day, even though I was doing it the whole time. But I don't think I started talking about it until I was like maybe 3 years in. I can't remember, but it wasn't until I saw Seth, what's his last name? Feroci, yeah. Seth made those videos. It was like I can't remember what they're. He had 3 different ones. It was like called drugs, bodybuilding, drugs, and whatever part. I can't remember what the title was, but he had 3 parts to it, and he was talking about steroids, and I was like, you can talk about this stuff. And then I saw Boston Lloyd's video, and then I saw Rich Piana talking about stuff, and I was like, okay, so we can talk about this stuff. And so then I just kind of slowly just started talking about, what kind of cycle I was doing at the time, and just pretended like I had always been talking about it. And ever since then, it just slowly became more and more drug-related content.
Yep.
Until, where we are now, where it's like basically every video is talking about 5 grams of test and a vial of Serostim a day. So yeah, that's how it's gone basically.
What would you say has been your most successful cycle?
Oh man,
the recent one?
I mean, it's really interesting because like I've made really good gains on lower doses before. Like I've had some really good cycles. Like the first bulk that I did pre-contest that I did with Jordan, I wasn't on a whole lot. And I did make very good gains, got up to 270 pounds, and it didn't look bad. The problem is when the bulk ended, we dropped all gear, and I like just lost everything. Just like deflated, got fat, and then we started the pre-contest cycle. And it was like, well, shit, what would have happened if we would have stuck with that the whole time? But
yeah,
I mean, so that cycle, I can't even remember what it was. It was like I think it was 500 test, 400 NPP, and 300 Masteron is what I want to say it was.
Okay.
It was 500, 400, 300. I think it was those 3, but it was like, it worked really well at that time. Now, now though, I would say like that used to be what I would say is the best cycle that I'd done. And there was like 4 or 6 IUs of growth hormone tagged on that. But now, I mean, I would probably say 3,500 test and either 1,400 Masteron or 700 Primo. But I feel like the real game changer for me was bringing in 18 IUs of Serostim a day is what really made things click for me, which like I had heard that before, like John Meadows, and I know people have heard this, like one of his quotes was the difference between an amateur and a pro is a vial of Serostim a day. And I was like, I heard that and it stuck with me, but I never really, I didn't believe it until I went through with it. And that's when I felt like I was responding to steroids the way that I should be is when I started doing that. Because I mean, I know not everybody has to take crazy doses and do these things, but because people have the response that I have to lots of growth hormone and gear on less, so it's just kind of like, so now I would say the cycle that I did last year and basically what I've done up to this point, all of last year, I was basically on 3,500 tests, 1,400 Masteron, and a vial of Serostim a day. This year, the first 4 months of the year, I was on 3,500 tests and 700 Primo and a vial of Serostim a day. And both of those have been great. The difference that I've seen in my physique, like now versus where I was like in 2022 is a huge, crazy, crazy difference.
Yeah.
And, I feel like, I get it. A lot of people say, like, why are you using this much? Like, you don't even look like a pro. Like, what are you doing? And that's where I'm kind of like, I mean, I've only been pushing these kind of doses for the last year and a half, really, where before that, it was, there was some experimentation with higher stuff, but it was nothing like consistent enough. And the growth hormone was never there. And it was just, it wasn't the same as what I've been experiencing now.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, well, let's give it a few more years and we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
So yeah.
What got you interested in higher doses and why'd you go as high as you did?
It's Phil Viz's fault. Just kidding. It's his fault. So I bought Phil Viz's seminar. He puts these out every year or so. I think he does one. I bought his seminar and he goes through talking about contest prepping and stuff. And none of this high dose stuff was the serious part of his talk. It was when he got to the Q&A portion, because it was live where people were asking questions. He got to the Q&A portion of his seminar where he got to start talking candidly about Olympia level doses and what is going on at that level. And some of the things that he was saying, I was just like, I was realizing like, okay, a vial of Serostim a day. Like I have the means at this point to try it and just see. And so I was just like, I guess let's give it a shot and see what happens. And like at that time, I was on like, it was around like 400 tests and it was like 200 Primo or 300 Primo or something, or Masteron, one or the other. And I was like, let's see what happens. And so then I threw in a vial of Serostim every other day because I was scared still. And I immediately just started seeing my weight climb up and just seeing things blow up from the inside. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But I was like, what's my blood sugar doing? So I'd be like constantly checking my blood sugar. Like I was scared to death that something bad was going to happen. I was very cautious going into this, but I was taking it every other day. And I was just like, okay, blood sugar is fine. It's not going up. Fasting blood sugar is not going up. So I was like, okay. And on the pamphlet inside the Serostim, it says, you know, AIDS patients get a vial every single day. And I was like, well, if AIDS patients can handle this, and then it also says in there, like, if you're experiencing too many side effects, back off to a vial every other day, and that should get rid of your side effects. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start with every other day. And then after like a week, I went to everyday injections, and it just amplified it to another level. Just things started moving faster, where I was filling out more and I was getting leaner at the same time. And I was just like, what? And like, I'd never experienced it before. I was just like, what the hell is happening? This is insane. And then at that point, I was like, okay, if this is going this great, I need to take, because I wasn't completely sure if I was going to be able to afford or continue to have a source for Serostim. So I was like, let's take advantage of this while we've got it. And let's start bumping up the testosterone and seeing how things go there. And at that point, I had never gone over like 1,200 tests. I'd never used more than that. So I was like, bumped from 400 to 700, and bumped from 700 to 1,000, then 1,000 to 1,200, and then 1,200, and it just kept climbing. And I kept monitoring everything, kept looking at my blood pressure, and it was like, nothing's going wrong. Nothing is giving me a hint that this is a bad idea. So I just kind of just kept letting it go. And everything just kept getting rounder and leaner. And I was like, and that's where I ended up. I got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm doing 3 mils every single day. I don't want to inject more than that. But at this point, like, I was at 3,500 tests and 1,400 Masteron. And, but everything was great.
Yeah.
I was like, and like, I did my blood work on Steve's channel, and he was like, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with this. This is impressive. So I ran that for most of last year. There were some times where I was pulling out the Masteron and swapping for Primo here and there, but I never really noticed much of a difference between it. But that was like, I did that. The titration started in mid-March with the Serostim, and like the titrations like got to the peak dosage at like June or July. And then I held that all the way until the Olympia. So July, August, September, October. Was it November? So it was another 4 months there. And then I stopped and took a break through November and December. Everything was so surprisingly well. Like I had zero issues. So then I'm just like, okay, well, for me, I guess I don't know why. I don't have a reason not to try. And when I saw this progression, I was just like, it gave me hope that, well, this is apparently what I have to do if I want to potentially get a pro card, as long as things kind of keep moving along this way. So then took November, December off, hopped back on in January, did no titrations, went straight to 3,500 test and 700 Primo, and ran that for January, February, March, and April. And then May, all of May and through June, I've been on a cruise of a gram a test and still making progress. But yeah, it's just these the last year and a half have been very eye-opening. For it's like, I feel like people think that I think that this is what everybody needs to be doing, but I definitely don't think that. I think for whatever reason, this is how I need to go about doing it. And I'm sure there's other people out there that have to do it that way, but I know it's not everybody, you know. But
Do
I
you
just
think
can't find a reason.
Do you think you have a genetic proclivity to handle higher doses better than other people? Because like your blood work, your scans, everything's immaculate.
It's crazy. I think a big part of it is that, like, I have been on some sort of gear since I was 23 and I'm 30. I'm going to be 38 here in a couple months.
Yeah.
So it's like I've been on stuff at varying amounts for a very long time and have kind of, I feel like I've just kind of like acclimated, my body's acclimated to running on exogenous hormones. So like I don't get acne. I don't get the negative side effects that a lot of people experience. But I mean, at the same time, I do use a lot of health supplements. I do use a lot of pharmaceutical supplements to keep everything looking good, So yeah, it's
one thing I wanted to ask you about is this kind of question of gatekeeping doses. And you mentioned people being like, oh, you're not a pro yet. Why are you taking so much? Which is like one side of the spectrum. The other side is like, and I totally agree with your philosophy on this. Like for first cycle, you should do like a few hundred, maybe 500 milligrams a test and just get results for like a long time. How do you kind of think about that idea of like, you have to reach a certain level to use a certain dose or to use certain compounds, certain drugs? Like, how do you think about that?
I mean, I think a lot of it will, the first thing that comes to mind is one reason I don't shy away from, because like I see how it's like bad to share what I'm doing at these doses, because younger people will try it that are absolutely not ready to handle something like that. And the only thing that I have to say to that is, sure, they'll try it, but they will find out really, really quick all the side effects. And if they and I mean, if they're just absolute foolish idiots, they will push through the side effects and keep going. But like, who's going to do that? Like, I mean, it would just be so terrible. Like, it would be so bad, especially like when you're that small and new to everything. It's like, that's 3 milliliters that you got to inject every day. Like, where are you going to put that and not have obscene lumps on your body,
You're going to have like test flu, all this stuff.
Right. Yeah. You're just going to be miserable. So like, that's one reason why I don't like shy away from just like talking about it. But I think that's a big part of what stops people from using more is the side effects that creep up. And I think a lot of people think that I coach people and like, this is what I tell people to do. And I still get people asking me to coach them because they want the truth. They want the real cycles. And I'm like, I don't coach anybody. I don't tell anybody like do this stuff. But like what I tell people to do is start with 250, start with 300 tests, work your way up. You don't want to experience side effects. Try to take as much as you can without getting side effects, because I mean, like, I wouldn't take what I take if I was experiencing awful side effects. Like they would, where's the fun in that? So it's like, I get to where I am because I don't experience negatives from it. So, as long as people are titrating up responsibly and, taking their time, I mean, use what you can handle and go from there. And like, my thing has been, use as much test as you can handle and then throw in something else to allow you to handle more. And as long as your blood pressure is in check because you're being a good bodybuilder and staying hydrated and doing your cardio and all that, like, I mean, you're probably not going to have a problem. Like, the big thing that you'll have to look out for is your estrogen. But, as long as you've got your Arimidex or Primo or Masteron, like, I mean, it's not that big a deal. So yeah. I get why people get mad at me though for talking about this stuff, because it's just like, I wish when I was younger, like, I feel like what I'm doing is what I wish I had when I was first getting started, because my first cycle was terrible. I guarantee if I would have started with just like a TRT dose and introduced myself to it, I wouldn't have gotten like the crazy appetite and all the bloating and just experienced that miserable first cycle that I did. and could have just like eased into things, and my second cycle wouldn't have been the rip blend. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I'm trying to do now.
No, I think you're definitely having an overall very net positive effects on the community and helping people, because there's a lot of bullshit out there and a lot of misguided people. Why do you think pros, like, first of all, over the last couple of years, what have you learned or opened your eyes to about like true pro doses? And why do you think people lie about it so much?
I mean, I think the big thing that people downplay is definitely the growth hormone and the growth hormone doses, and just like the testosterone doses in general. But I think the reason that they do, I mean, there's definitely certain figureheads that have a following, that have a lot more of a responsibility than I do. Like C-Bum gets brought up all the time. Like, why does he say that he's only on 500 test? You know, why does he say that's all that he does? He's never done growth hormone and all this stuff. Well, he's got like tons of kids watching him, like legitimate kids, you know, like he's got way more responsibility and a younger audience. Like, and he's like, you know, in charge. He's the head of Raw and Revive. Like, there's just so much on top of that. Like, it's just like, you can't, like, that makes sense. You know, you can't knock him for that. But
yeah, it's a good point.
I feel like a lot of other guys, you know, that aren't in that kind of position, they don't talk about it because they don't want the next guy to know what was the game changer for them. If they did have a game changer. For me, the game changer absolutely was a vial of Serostim a day. Like that, that opened my eyes and changed everything for me. And since then, I have heard from a lot of people writing me back saying they experienced the same thing. I you know, I gave them the motivation to try it, and they were like, "Oh my God, this is real." So I don't know. I do feel that, you know, people don't want to talk about that because they don't want the next guy to know, so that they can't have that opportunity to get on their level.
Yeah.
And I feel like probably right now, the thing that's like not talked about so much is like Increlex and IGF-1 and that kind of stuff, because I don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about that, but I do know some competitors that just kind of came up recently and won a show, changed a lot in the last year because he got his hands on Increlex. And but he hasn't maybe he has said it in his inner circles, but I know when I met him at the Olympia last year, that's what he was getting his hands on. And he was so stoked that he was finally going to get it. And this year he wins a pro show. So it's kind of like, I feel like guys aren't talking about that. I've never tried it. It hasn't been anything that, number one, I haven't looked for it, but I haven't tried it, haven't messed with it. But I think that's probably something that is definitely a lot more hush hush now than anything else. But yeah, I think it's guys just don't want other guys to know what they're doing, so that the next guy's like, well, if he's on 4 grams and I'm on 2 grams, I guess I can at least go to 3 grams or maybe 4 grams and even the playing field out. So that's the thing. It's like nobody knows what the next guy's doing. So it's like, how do we even the playing field besides just try to out train them?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's really interesting, like kind of mind game. Who do you look up to now or consult with about your cycles?
I mean, the people I consult with the most is going to be Steve, Vigorous Steve for sure. I mean, like literally, I was just on with him talking about my next cycle, and he might have changed my mind on what I originally had planned. I mean, yeah. So yeah, he's like, just do, because the goal is to get a 20,000 nanogram per deciliter blood test for total testosterone. And he's like, I would just stick to straight test and use Arimidex and just take the test to 5 grams, if you can get there, and
Sure.
and not mess around with any other drugs in it. So I'm kind of like, that is definitely the safest option.
Yeah.
So instead of throwing in the other stuff
Pure
that
test.
I want to, but yeah,
I like
don't
it.
know. But yeah, so that's I
That'd be
definitely
a cool experiment.
just straight test. I did. Yeah. Steve's definitely one of the guys that I respect his opinion a lot. And he knows, like, even though his channel he talks a lot about like microdosing, a lot of different things, he still understands like what people have to do,
Yeah.
So I talk to him a lot about my stuff. I have a group chat with Paul and Kurt and Roman and Justin Harris, and we shoot the shit in there all day, and everybody
Cool.
kind of runs by the other one what we're using and what we're doing. So yeah, between those guys, that's pretty much kind of where we kind of have our checks and balances. And as far as like learning stuff, most of what I'm trying to learn now is just more health related stuff, preventative measures and stuff like that. And yeah, Kurt knows a ton about that, and Steve as well. Those are definitely the two guys that I lean on the most for that kind of information, and change my protocol around a little bit,
cool,
here and there. So
yeah, I wanted to ask what ancillaries I know you just had a video come out about this, so people should definitely check that out for the deep dive. But what are the main ancillaries you use pharmaceutical to help manage things? Yeah,
for me, it's like focusing on blood pressure is number one, because if your blood pressure is good, like that's going to limit the risk that's going on with your kidneys, and limit the risk of your heart, and preventing it from growing and taking damage and fibrosis and all that. So like the main thing is a blood pressure medication, an ARB, which right now for me it's telmisartan, which I do have a stronger ARB on deck if I need it.
Okay.
But so like I have olmesartan at home, which it's supposed to be a stronger one that I can swap out if, like I said, if I need it. But I'm good. I've been good, like on the 3500 test. I've been fine using Telmi for that. So telmisartan, I take that 80 milligrams. I've been taking that for I got prescribed it in 2022 before I started. Yeah, because I started in 2023 with that stuff. So yeah, I've been using that for a while. And I have that. My doctor prescribed that to me. He mixed that with hydrochlorothiazide at 25 milligrams a day just to make the telmisartan more effective. And that's a mild diuretic for the people that know. So those two things. And then I'm also using nebivolol, which is a beta blocker, which just kind of keeps your heart rate a little bit lower, how do you find that? I tried it recently and it was too much for me. I used 10 milligrams initially, and it was like I was asleep. And then I tried 5, and it was still like I was very, very tired on that. But you find you don't have that effect? Well, it's weird. Like I tried it. Oh God, when was that? It was before, I think it was in 2021. Because I remember I was training at Quads. I didn't have my gym yet. And I remember I had to lay down on the floor because I thought I was going to pass out. Because I just couldn't, it was like I couldn't get enough oxygen. Like my heart wasn't beating fast enough to control, like to do anything. So I literally just laid down on the floor in the middle of the place and was like, this sucks. And just tried to chill. But like I'm pretty sure it was 2021. I tried it at 10 milligrams a day. And I did it for like a week until that happened. I never experienced that again. And then I I started it back up recently because I did start cutting in the last 5 weeks. So I started it up like 4 weeks ago, but I also included it with clenbuterol.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe there's a balancing act going on there.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that, because usually when I take clen, my resting heart rate will climb up, maybe 10 beats across the time span that I use it, based on like my sleeping heart rate. And like I'm on 120 micrograms at the moment of clen and 10 milligrams in Abivalol, and my resting heart rate hasn't budged yet. It's still sitting solid at like 59 to 61.
Nice.
So I'm like, okay, well, that's good. And I haven't had any negatives in the gym or, felt tired in the day or anything like that.
Good.
So things have been fine this round. But like I said, I feel like the clen is probably balancing that out a little bit. I don't know, maybe, but yeah, so far this time it's been good. But I swore it off, since 2021, people asked me about it and I would bring that up and just be like, I don't want to touch that again. But then what was it? I read someone in my Discord posted this thing by Lyle McDonald talking about the synergy between Nabivolol and clen and yohimbine, and it was just like going through like a stack similar to like ECA and stuff like that. And it was talking about how Nabivolol has like a synergistic effect with clenbuterol. And I'll have to, it probably got pinned in the Discord somewhere, but it's in there.
I'll look for it.
Yeah. I think I downloaded it, so I'll probably repost it. But yeah, I mean, so I read the whole thing, and that's when I was like, okay, I'll give Nabivolol another try, but I'm doing it with clen. And it's been great. So, I mean, I these last 5 weeks of cutting have been going very well.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, it's been I started at 283 this morning. I was 263. I just had a high carb day on Sunday, which Monday I was 269. And today I was 263. Like a lot of it just already kind of out of
it's gone.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think I might be doing like a high carb day, maybe every 4 or 5 days instead of every 7
that's
days.
what I did in prep.
Oh yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how much more comes out in the next day or two. But
how far are you planning to take the cut?
So I'm starting my next cycle this weekend. I'm getting blood work on Friday to see where everything's at on 1,000 test. Starting the next cycle, and I'm going to cut for another 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. And so that'll be basically, in total, it'll be about 12 weeks of cutting, which I imagine if I was like 16 weeks out when I started, I mean, that would put me maybe somewhere in the ballpark of 4 to 8 weeks out, which is relatively a lean, good look.
Yeah.
And at that point, so 8 weeks from now, we'll be 8 weeks out from the Olympia, and I'll have 8 weeks left of my cycle. So like at that point, I'll shift gears, increase carbs, and kind of, grow into that and finish out the cycle. So
just look massive and jacked and lean at the Olympia.
It's the game plan. Yeah. Are you going to be there? Are you going to go?
I might. I'm pretty afraid of the Olympia flu, so we'll see.
It's not that bad. No, I mean, you should. So we've actually, I've got a booth.
Oh, you are doing a booth. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's set up. I just got to pick my spot on the map where they're going to put us. So,
okay.
But yeah, we're going to have a spot to hang out.
Awesome.
I don't want to be walking around for 5 hours again.
Yeah, that's smart.
It's just terrible. Like, plus, like, there's people that want to meet you, and when you're just like, you're going with the flow of the crowd because there's nowhere else to go, and it's like you meet the people that directly cross paths with you, but anybody else, like, they just don't see you. So I was like, number one, I want people to be able, like, people that want to meet us will know where we are. And number two, I want to be able to sit on a couch with my feet up and eating my meals and drinking my water and not be walking around with a damn backpack on with my water in it and food, and just be able to chill and enjoy being there and let people come to us. And
that'll be a lot more pleasant.
Oh yeah. So that's going to be great. So we'll have a spot for everybody to chill. Cool. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Has having a child changed how you think about bodybuilding at all?
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing is like, I wouldn't be doing all of this to myself if I thought that it was going to seriously be damaging to me. And that's the thing that I think a lot of guys don't realize is like how much I am paying attention to my health and getting blood work done and watching what's going on. Because like the moment I see something start creeping in a direction that I'm like, okay, I don't like that. Like, I'll just pull the plug. Like, I don't care. I'll just be like, nope, done. It's not worth it. Like that. I mean, that's going to be the thing. Like if my blood pressure starts climbing throughout this and I can't control it, then it's like, this isn't going to work. So, I'll back off and go back down, and, that'll be that. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely like I was already very health conscious, but it just adds another level, to the whole thing in that, there's other people counting on you, so it does change things, but it's just like, I don't know. I feel like so many people that watch what I'm doing just don't realize how much I don't have a death wish. Like I'm not trying to
you're very
myself.
meticulous.
I'm not.
You do more scans and blood work than probably 99.9% of bodybuilders.
Well, that's the whole thing is like this next cycle. Like I made that video talking about the next cycle, and I've seen so many podcasts talk about me and like blowing it out of proportion. Some of them think I'm already on 5 grams of test right now. I'm like, it didn't even start yet. What are we talking about? But it's like it's good. It's not like I'm going straight to 5 grams. It's like I'm going to take 1 gram to 2 grams, 2 to 3, and at every stop, we're going to get blood work along the way and see how things are. And if something's wrong, it's like, well, that's it. But if that's the other thing is like if I get to 4 grams of test, which again, I was on 3,500 for like the last year and a half, and it was great. So I know I can get the 4 grams of test. I know I can get to 5 grams. But if I get to 4 grams of test and I break 20 nanograms per deciliter, then awesome, it's done. I don't have to go to 5. Like I don't want to go to 5 grams of test, but that's kind of what's like driving this whole thing is potentially getting the 20,000 nanograms per deciliter thing. But yeah, it's just, it definitely adds another layer having a baby. So,
yeah.
Do you have any kids?
I don't yet. I have 2 dogs, but that's soon. Probably 2 years from now, we'll get pregnant and then have one. I'm 31. I'm about to be 32 in a couple weeks here.
Oh yeah, cool.
So still time.
Plenty of time.
Yeah. Some bodybuilders say this thing, which is like, I'm willing to take some years off my life to have a better life. And I'm not judging that, but like, I think that's totally cool. Do you agree with that, or do you think about it differently? You kind of just answered it, but
I mean, it's like, I definitely don't want to take years off my life. But if I can drastically improve the quality of my life and improve, I mean, because there's a lot of crossover here with what I do, because it's like, yeah, a lot of this stuff is intertwined with YouTube and making money. So it's like I don't think doing 5 grams of test and shooting for a 20,000 nanogram per deciliter is going to be extremely harmful to my health. maybe it will take a couple years off at the end stage of life, but if it can help move, the needle on my career a little bit more, because like that's another thing that I feel like so many guys watching like don't understand is like, this is how I make my money is YouTube. Like I don't have another job. Like this is everything. And that's, if that can push the needle a little bit more, making this kind of content while keeping my health, like, yeah, I'll push that boundary a little bit, but yeah, it's just, I so far, like doing all of this, like YouTube has made our life very comfortable, very satisfying and happy. And without this, I mean, things would be hard. Like being a personal trainer, like a one-on-one hourly rate personal trainer.
What a grind.
Sucks. Like 200 sessions a month, like 50 sessions a week. Like I did that for years and it was terrible.
Can't imagine.
And I wasn't getting, like when I first started as a personal trainer, it's like here in Illinois, they have Export Fitness and they're all over the place, but it's like they start you off at $12 a session for personal trainers. So when I started, so yeah, that was like when I was 24. So they start you at $12 a session. Like the client pays $50, the gym gives you $12.
Wow.
And that's where it started. Within a few months, they bumped me to $15. And then after my first 3 years, they bumped me to $17. Right. And then, right. And then it was like at year 5, I got to $20. But then, right. But then at that point, they started like this whole sliding scale thing where it was like the more hours you worked, the higher you would be on the sliding scale. So it was like for the last 2 to 3 years that I was there, I was averaging like 25 to 30 an hour. But still, it was like, 200 sessions a week. Like I'm busting my ass being in front of somebody for 50 hours a week and maybe getting, if everything was perfect, I was getting $6,000 a month before taxes,
Wow.
So it was just
terrible.
Yeah. I mean, you just, and you just have no time. Like your time is just gone. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of people just don't see, the stark contrast between how my life is now versus how life was, back then. And it's like,
yeah,
to do what I'm doing, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Good for you. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Chase. I really enjoyed it, learned a lot, and always appreciate your time and your content. Where can folks find you? And I'll just give a shout out. Join the Discord where you can talk to Chase and idiots like me. Talk about the YouTube channel and anything else you got going on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, any social media, I'm just at Chase Irons. My website's chaseironsfitness.com. On YouTube, I do have a monthly membership that will get you into the Discord. So you can find that on my YouTube channel, which is Chase Irons. And yeah, I mean, that's it. So
awesome. Thanks, Chase.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you for listening to the show. You can find The Scott Mize Show on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please leave a comment, like, review, or share the podcast with your friends or followers. It helps more people find the show.